We're doing Squiddy the Goat Duel, who is, y'all know Squiddy from, I think he's technically team, on Tombox's channel. At least he was the cameraman at Worlds. I remember meeting him. He posted this Yu-Gi-Oh documentary thing that has almost a million views. It's kind of wacky. So let's check this out and see what's going on here.
But I decided
how one man sabotaged the Yu-Gi-Oh tournament for 1,500
players.
players.
It made people very upset.
How did one-man strategy nearly sabotage an entire Yu-Gi-Oh tournament for over 1,000 players? This is the story of a man who surprised the world with a toxic strategy that no one wanted to play against. It was a stall deck that had the potential to hold up a tournament for hours longer than it was supposed to be. And it got to the point where even if the judges wanted to disqualify him, they couldn't because he was still technically playing within the rules. A fact that would be
okay, that's like incorrect. The judge can disqualify you even though you're technically not doing anything wrong and breaking rules because it comes under tournament policy like essentially Konami reserves the right to disqualify anyone for any reason. Like that's like in the fine print. So they can do that for any reason essentially. False? It's not false. They also established this a long time ago. If you guys remember the guys who showed up with like a 2,000 card deck, you're just disrupting the flow of the tournament, right? Like that, you can infer, you can justify, disqualifying someone who's causing a holdup of the tournament. Like, you definitely can do that. That is a fact. 100%.
rather ironic for
like. What do you like? Think about it realistically. You think you can like play some like deck or combo that technically like can hold up a venue for like 3 days, and Konami are just gonna be like, oh yeah, no, sure, yeah, venue security, you know, the event staff, production team, no, they all need to stay here and watch. Like, just think about it realistically. Like, you can't. What are they gonna do? Chain the judges to radiate? Like, no. Like, of course they can legally end the tournament whenever they really want, technically.
22-year-old Alan Pennington himself was previously the most well-known head judge in Florida. But
he topped with Monarchs in like 2018 or something.
Online, he would be barred from enlisting as a head judge for future tournaments, a canon event that would unleash the start of his villain saga.
2 weeks before the regional,
a canon event
gets an email basically explicitly saying that they are not allowed to have me as a head judge. It was because of the fact that I had been criticizing Konami's policies online. So these were things like,
with the
like all the power creep. I thought the prize support could be a lot better, so on, you know. So yeah, online I was posting some things about Konami.
And left unable to oversee the tournaments as a head judge, he instead turned his focus to joining them as a player.
So, like, can I just say, it's really jarring when he keeps going back and forth between different, like, times of Alan, because like sometimes he has hair, sometimes he doesn't, and I'm confused like when the timeline is.
With his eyes set on an upcoming major event, YCS San Diego, a championship-level tournament that would draw the strongest players from the continent. But he would have some time to prepare, with several local tournaments and smaller regional qualifiers to first test his theories. And through his research, one particular strategy would catch his attention. Originally surfacing at a regional by a fellow duelist with the name of Tyler Nolan, it was the first iteration of what would be called the Gishki FTK. The concept was pretty simple. Use draw spells to draw as much of his own deck as possible, and then use cards like hand destruction and card destruction to force the opponent to draw
Gishki ever like
cards
real
until they eventually decked out.
Because I've heard of it being like an annoying FTK for years, but was it ever like actually like a real deck?
6-3 at a regional with Gishki FTK, and this kind of mostly
I didn't play during that period
because like, hey, it's a regional.
Still is, yeah, okay, sure.
6-3. Who cares? Tyler was kind of on the same wavelength as me in that we were not really what we would call meta players. And I was like, huh, this is pretty much like the pinnacle of a weird combo deck.
Now, to achieve this, over half of the deck would be composed of draw cards, ranging from Upstart Goblin to Into the Void, Trade-In, Moray of Greed, Dark World Dealings, and of course the newly released One Day Apiece, a card that would force both players to draw a card, but also prevent any damage being dealt for the next 2 turns.
I always like to like push games to their limits. Show me something broken, and then let me come up with something even more broken.
But you might be wondering how a deck out situation would be possible, because the opponent would technically have to draw almost 40 cards to deck out. And with card destruction being limited to one copy per deck due to rampant abuse in the past, this might prove to be a challenge. But they quickly discovered it was possible to easily recycle card destruction and hand destruction with an engine that everyone had previously disregarded, the Gishki engine.
Gishki FTK is a combo deck. Play a bunch of draw spells, draw your entire deck. Then you put your graveyard back into your deck, draw your entire deck again, your graveyard back into your deck, draw your entire deck again. And you could keep doing this as long as you want. It is an infinite,
Wait, is this the combo? It just infinitely loops
Mainly
one
in
day of
part due
peace
to
to
its
deck
titular
your
card,
opponent
the
out? This is
Gishki
miserable.
Mind August. This card would allow the user to recycle back 5 cards from either graveyard back to the owner's deck,
It's
meaning
up to
they
as
could
well.
recycle card destruction quite easily. The Gishki ritual spell, Gishki Aqua Mirror, had a built-in graveyard effect that could shuffle itself back to the deck and then return a Gishki ritual monster in your graveyard back to your hand, creating a failsafe that prevents the user from decking out, but also allowing them to recycle the resources so they can loop Gishki Mind August over and over again. And of course, being older cards released before the designers imposed a hard once per turn restriction, both of these cards could be activated as many times.
What was
as
the
you
first
wanted.
ever
And
once
with
per
3
turn
copies
card
of
in
Aqua Mirror
Yu-Gi-Oh?
and 2 copies of Mind August, you could essentially create a pseudo-infinite loop.
You want to design a game? Okay, make you earn your paycheck. I'm going to show you the worst possible consequences of your game design.
They would try and draw their entire deck, a feat that was attained pretty easily with the amount of draw
Mind
spells
on
that the deck
air.
played. And of course, this was over a decade ago where hand
Instant
traps were not
fusion.
very prevalent. Ash Blossom Joy Spring was not a thing, so you could not stop the effect of draw spells. And even though Drone Lockbird was released, no one was really playing it because back then the decks didn't do any searching, so there was nothing you could really side it against besides this deck, which no one really knew about. Effect Veiler was around, but it was pretty useless against the best decks, so it didn't see a lot of play. And against Gishki, it was somewhat effective against Royal Magical Library, but that was really about it.
The only relevant hand traps against Gishki FTK were Nico Money King and Droll and Lockbird. And people did not side those cards because they were literally unplayable against every other deck in the format.
Once the deck was empty, Mind August could then
When did Droll
recycle
become like a
copy
good
of
card? I
Hand
mean, if you consider
Destruction
like
and
Necros
Salvage.
was a
A
good
second
deck in
copy of Hand
2015
Destruction
that
would then
searched
be
constantly
activated
and no
from the
one
hand
played
to
Droll.
draw the Salvage and the Hand
I mean, it must have been
Destruction
years
that was
before
returned
Droll
to
was
the deck, while
good.
burning 2 cards from the opponent's deck at the same time. 2 copies of Gishki Aqua Mirror then return themselves to the deck to add back the Mind August and fodder to hand, followed by Salvage adding back 2 copies of Gishki Shadow, then searching those same Aqua Mirrors. This would allow another copy of August to be resummoned, shuffling back Salvage and Hand Destruction to the deck once more, allowing the freshly drawn Hand Destruction to then repeat the process, discarding Aqua Mirror for free each time thanks to Salvage's resource management. The Aqua Mirrors
Is Hand
spin
Destruction in
themselves
the
back to
anime?
deck
That's so
for
funny.
Shadow to research to hand.
I mean, it's just
providing infinite
Sasuke
Mind
Samurai on the
Augusts, who
artwork,
then
right?
recycle infinite Hand Destructions and Salvages, creating a bizarre
God, I've never
but
actually
infinite
looked at
loop,
Mind August's,
all while slowly decking out the opponent
artwork.
every time Hand Destruction resolves.
Gee, a freak.
Interestingly enough, the rest of the Gishki engine also supported the consistency of this combo. Gishki Shadow could be discarded to search for Gishki Aqua Mirror, while Gishki Vision could be discarded to search for either Mind August or Soul Ogre, another Gishki ritual monster used solely as a level 8 body to discard with trade-in. And here is why the strategy was extremely toxic, because the combo took extremely long to execute. It wasn't an infinite combo, so to speak, because the combo lines would be different, so you couldn't just declare an infinite loop and say that you were conducting it over and over again. You had to physically play the cards each time, and despite a match of Yu-Gi-Oh! Being a best 2 out of 3, oftentimes the first game would take well over 40 minutes, leading to a timeout situation where they would win inevitably after conducting the loop, and because there's only enough time for
Can I just say, obviously bad to, victim blame and stuff? Why are you waiting there for 40 minutes for your opponent? Just scoop and go to game 2. Like, what are you waiting for? Like,
one game, there would not be a game 2 or a
the,
game 3.
the person
meaning that
who is sitting, like, watching their opponent full Gishki combo, and they're just waiting for them to, like, maybe they'll mess up because technically it's not an infinite loop, is like, brother, like, I'm not sitting 40 minutes for a potential game 1 for you because maybe the order in which August shuffles the cards back into the deck and then for your Hand Destruction to draw the wrong order, like, oh, dude, like, I don't know. People back then were impaired and were like, surely this combo doesn't win in the first turn.
player
Yeah, surely.
inevitably
Clueless.
wins on the spot.
What you can do,
It's a
and
pretty
what I
unknown
did,
concept
I
to
believe,
just scoop
4
back. To be
times
fair,
during
yes,
this
this was a
9-round
long time
regional,
ago
was
where
decking out
time
my
rules were
opponent
5
on
turns.
game
So
1,
time was not
turn
really a thing you even
1
thought about.
After time has been called, and therefore you win the entire match 1-0.
This, of course, meant that if you were sitting across the table from a deck like this, the counter strategy was to concede once you saw that they had the infinite loop going, so you had enough time to play a game 2 and a 3, where you could also take advantage of your side deck.
You have to scoop or I'm going to time you out on game 1. I mean, you're comboing me. I know I'm not going to win. I'm just going to scoop to save time. But the idea of scooping to save time was a foreign concept to people back then. The only
Yeah, it really
people
was.
that were scooping were people that were...
Bro! What? What, dude? What is this? This is a text 2012 on an iPhone like 6. Like, look at that interface. Robbie Boyaja, this is an ex-Konami employee that used to work in... I can't remember what Boyajan did. I think he was R&D, or was he R&D? I don't know. He was an ex like face of Konami for years. I feel like I want to say he ended up moving to like... Well, I can't say, but you know, whatever.
Told about my deck by their friends and were like, hey, if you play this guy, make sure you scoot.
But of course, with the strategy being rather new, no one really understood this, so they would just sit there and watch the player combo.
Crazy that he's
but
putting
at the
this
same
in the
time,
video,
there was
but
a
okay.
conundrum for the opponent because there was
An
always
iPhone
a
3 or
chance
4?
of the
Yeah,
Gishki
okay.
deck
Even
fizzling.
worse.
Even after drawing the majority of the deck, surprisingly, there's a
Wait, he's a
mathematical
teacher? Wait,
chance
actually?
that the user does not assemble the
Konami
infinite combo,
rep
or
to
if they actually
teacher
mess up one of
pipeline,
their
huh?
sequences, there's a chance that they have to pass turn without executing the full loop. So conceding early would
He's
actually
not?
be a mistake for the player. And surprisingly,
surely be
this
the other
would
way
happen
around,
during
right?
testing for Allen when he was close to fizzling and his opponent conceded. But the deck also had a glaring weakness.
Wait,
It
hold on. Well,
for
that's why you
Allen.
don't scoop. Towards the end, I got very close to fizzling, but my opponent actually conceded.
Conceding early would actually be a mistake for the player. And surprisingly,
When we said that my opponent made it clear he knew how my deck worked, so I knew he would concede when it was obvious that I was going to win. I opened a fine starting hand that would likely result in FTKing. Towards the end, I got close to fizzling, but my opponent could... This is the most degenerate combo in Yu-Gi-Oh history. Because at least, like, with conventional FTKs, there's just, like, a line that you do, and you perform, you do the combo, and you FTK. This one takes, like, 40 minutes, and it's dynamic. So it isn't the same each time. That's crazy. Every time you shuffle back, the cards you draw off of the Hard Destruction and the One Day of Peace are gonna be different because you've shuffled your deck for the 5 cards. Like, a dynamic FTK like that means technically you should wait in case your opponent actually fizzles out.
this would happen during testing for Allen when he was close to fizzling and his opponent conceded. But the deck also had a glaring weakness. It wasn't very good going second. If the opponent could set up a monster negate to stop the Royal Magical Library from accumulating counters for a free draw, or utilize preemptive hand destruction like Mulan Glacia the Elemental Lord, then the game would pretty
Crazy
much
that we're
be
talking about
over
Mulan
immediately
Glacia
for
in
the
2000
Gishki
and
player.
like...
Yet in spite of these flaws,
What year is
Tyler
this
Nolan
supposed to
would
be?
still finish his regional with a 6-3 record. But the deck would be brushed off by the masses as a meme-worthy deck because it didn't reach the top 16 of that regional. Allen, on the other hand, had
13.
an affinity for playing
12?
strange combo decks, and the Gishki FTK would
I think it's
certainly
pre-Dragon
pique his
Rule, right?
interest. He would then take the same strategy himself to another regional tournament with 400 players, even bringing a bingo checklist form just to see how much damage it could actually cause. With some notable achievements including winning a duel with at least 30 cards in his hand, get a judge called on him at least 5 times in a single match, and get verbally or physically assaulted by an angry mob of duelists, which luckily was not checked off.
So I decided to show up to this
Okay.
regional, and I was, kind of in a vengeful mood. And I decided to take this Gishki FTK deck, but I decided to take this deck to ruin this event.
And notably, in this tournament, he would time out at least 5 of his opponents, some of which got extremely salty and even called the judge. In fact, one player would
This is like a bit of a stretch, but like, surely it's... I don't want to use the term punishable, but if your intent, your literal intent, your goal is to go to an event purely to be disruptive to the flow of the tournament, that has to be like a DQable like thing, right? Like, surely? We used to be close friends. I remember when we were young, my dad was picking me up and him to go to a regional, and he was grabbing Squiddy at 7 a.m. Squiddy called me at 4:30 asking my dad, and I wanted to chill. Wanted a chili dog from a 7-Eleven at the corner store. It was so random. At 4 a.m. for a chili dog? Hell yeah.
turn the favor of sabotage
Old school Yu-Gi-Oh! Bring it back.
by deliberately
Can we time out these clowns who are like that? What is why that is not a thing? Like,
cutting his deck, even if there were only 2 or 3 cards left, and asking him about every single
There's
card
too many.
effect. A strategy that would prove to be rather ineffective, for he
Quick
would
chat when
eventually
someone
time out
posts
and
something
lose because of
meaningful
it,
and
adding
relevant.
more fuel to the butthurt.
Getting mad at me
That's more than
for
one
playing
sentence.
Gishki FTK, and I'm like,
We used to play
no,
Fortnite.
This isn't my problem. This is Konami's problem. They're the one trying to promote this gameplay. I'm just taking it to its logical extreme.
But through his testing, he would also realize that the deck had a slight counter within the format in the form of Thunder King Ryo. This was a card that would prevent him from utilizing his Gishki
Some things
cards
never
to
change.
search his
Time's a
deck,
flat circle.
effectively shutting off the 6 Gishki effect monsters that would search for Aqua Mirror or Mind August. But as long as he had draw power, he could consistently summon out a large Gishki ritual monster and then proceed to swing over Ryo by battle, continuing to combo in main phase 2. And everything went relatively as planned, for he would finish with a 7-2 record overall, barely losing in the last round and missing out on the top 8 cut. The players in the hall were so disgusted,
Wait, top 8? 7-2? Is this like a UDS? Why would you not top on X2? Oh, this was, I think, back when Yu-Gi-Oh! Events had like 500 players. So you needed to go like X1 or something to, Oh, it's a regional. Oh yeah, American regionals for 9 rounds. 9-round regional? Jeez.
of which complained to the judges and the tournament organizers. And an active
Dear
Konami
Konami.
representative who was present on the scene would even ask Alan how to best hit the deck on the next ban list.
At that regional, there was a Konami employee there, and he actually like explicitly asked me, is like, you know, he's like, hey, I know that you haven't broken any rules, so to speak, but like, what can we do to hit this deck? Well, the obvious thing would just be a limit 1 day apiece. And the
Hey, so I know you're technically not doing anything illegal. How do we ban your deck?
games where you don't FTK with the deck go, well, I'm gonna 1 day of piece you, you can't deal any damage to me. Oh, it's back to me again. Okay, and now I'll kill you.
Now, 7-2 with such a deck at a 400-man regional was actually something respectable, and word of his performance would begin to spread online. With many more complaining on the forums, some...
Is that Bowden? Yu-Gi-Oh! Duelist Bowden. Wait, is that Bowden? Like no, there's no way. What a waste of a report you didn't even top. That sounds like something Bowden would say. I'm gonna screenshot this. All right, quick little intermission. I gotta send this over to him and ask him if it's actually him. This you?
of who would even email Konami.
Why do you think people hate you?
I don't mind calling people bad if they are bad.
But luckily for the
Whoa,
community, the
toxic.
R&D team would hear their cries, and on the next ban list, 1 day apiece would be limited to 1 copy per deck, severely hampering its consistency.
1
and
day
total
got limited,
strategy.
get it?
And the
To 1
community would
copy?
be satisfied for what they thought was an adequate hit to make the deck disappear completely. But they were wrong. With YCS San Diego just a few weeks away, Alan didn't give up. He continued testing the deck, replacing
Wait, so he
1 day
lied to
apiece
Konami
with
staff? He lied. He lied. He said, "Oh, this is how you kill the deck. Limit 1 day of peace," and then that's all they did. What, did they not hit any Gishki cards? Like,
Ace as an additional draw engine, though at a slightly higher gamble. Now, Cup of Ace
Cup
was
of Ace always has
really a
baby!
card. It's basically a pot of greed that nets the user 2 additional cards, but only if you win the 50-50
I can't
coin
believe
toss.
he's
On
explaining
the flip
pot of
side,
greed.
if the user
Love
loses
it.
a coin toss, not only does the opponent draw 2 cards, but the user also loses a card from the hand in the form of a Cup of Ace that netted 0 advantage. But together with Tyler Nolan, they determined that Cup of Ace was the
This
card
has
with
to
the
be a
highest
Luke Von
mathematical
Karma
chance
clip
of
he's
still
using.
winning the duo, and
From
therefore
Dartworld,
the most
this has to be
adequate
from Danny, right?
replacement for 1 day apiece.
What I came up with is Cup of Ace. Say if you have like 2 Cup of Aces and one of them draws you 2, the other one draws your opponent 2. That's actually fine and sometimes can even be helpful, because one strategy that people can use against Gishki is to just set like a bunch of back rows, because then you can't legally activate hand destruction, right? Because you need 2 cards in your hand to legally activate hand destruction.
He's
So
thought
I
of
can take
every
advantage of the
possible
ones that draw me
situation.
cards
Like,
and the ones
this
that
is
draw you
insane.
cards by making my hand destruction
every possible, like,
able to be activated.
way
Despite
for
hurting the
his
deck,
deck
the
till
ban
he's
list
figured
would
it
also
out.
help
Like, yeah,
it
just Cup of Ace
indirectly by
lose.
hurting its bad matchups. For starters, number 16 Shockmaster was finally banned, a card that previously meant immediate loss for the deck should they win the Dyro and call spells. Now, YCS San Diego was particularly unique, and it was different from the standard Yu-Gi-Oh! Championship series. Instead of using a constructed deck, for the first 9 rounds of day 1, they would be forced to build a sealed deck from 6 packs of Battle Pack, with a 7-2 or better record required to make day 2, where Alan would then play 5 more rounds using his Gishki deck. Surprisingly, this actually made
What the hell is that deck? What is that? Like, what is this? Is this a side deck? What?
where Alan would then play 5 more rounds
With
using
Battle
his
Pack?
Gishki deck. Surprisingly, this actually made the
that shit
deck
was
a lot more
fire.
viable, given that there were less
Battle
rounds
Pack
with it,
sealed.
which meant less die rolls, less variants, and ultimately a lower chance to fizzle out,
Yo,
providing
Snipe
the deck
Hunter's
a
got
solid
grippers.
chance to top if he could muster at least a 3-2 record with solid tiebreakers. The YCS tournament would begin
You're
with
not
the judge
listening?
handing Alan a deck box
I'm listening to
containing
my
one of
speakers.
the
I'm,
worst sealed pools he had ever seen. Gore's the
I do miss
Emissary
some
of
things when I
Darkness,
read
Solemn
chat.
Judgment, Mirror Force, or Damage Step battle modifiers like Forbidden Lance were
Damage Step.
key cards in the sealed pool, but his deck would contain none of these, beyond one lone copy of Heavy Storm as his sole power card.
I actually opened like a horrible sealed pool. I did not open a lot of power cards, but I still went 7-2. I credit that to a lot of playtesting with Michael Lux.
But unlike the majority of other players in the room, what he did have was practice. The man had taken ample time before the event to carefully research all of the niche interactions and the cards in the set, having purchased multiple cases just to practice with his friends in the weeks leading up to the tournament. Though he would be forced to endure a battle of attrition as the decks got better and better with every
Practicing
consecutive match
sealed
that he
is an
won,
insane
he
thing that
miraculously
Konami
finished
can
with
do
a
to
7-2
milk money,
record,
by the way. It's
defeating national
crazy.
champion Patrick Holman on the
If
last
you make
round of Game
sealed
1,
events,
granting him
people
access to
buy
Day 2, where the
sealed
real
cards.
tournament would begin. And on the
Sealed,
next day, Alan
product.
woke up knowing that he was about
Wild,
to send
huh?
a
Crazy
wake-up call to
concept.
the Yu-Gi-Oh community, the likes of which they have never seen before. But unlike at the regional, where the deck was
Online
a
tools
completely new
exist?
concept, by now
I know
a
this is
lot
a
of the
crazy
players
idea
had
as
caught
well
on
in
to the
concept,
fundamentals
but
and
some
the
people
basics
like
of how
playing
the
in
deck
person.
worked, having
I know,
spread word online of his
but
performance
some
at that
people
regional.
like
At the regional, there's
being in the
much
card shop with
more
their
of a
friends and
reaction.
getting a
Again, they were
drink
just
and
flabbergasted,
going out for
like, what is
food
this
and
deck?
coming
What
back
is this
and
guy doing?
playing
Why is
some
he
cards.
taking so much time? Oh my god, what the hell's happening?
Yeah, I know.
But again,
I know
by the time
shufflers
the
are
YCS
real
rolled
people.
around, most people were kind of vaguely aware of the deck at least.
But at times, players would still try to play out Game 1, with the match ending in a 1-0 victory for Alan as the timer hit 0. And as he reached the top tables, crowds would start forming around him to witness the toxicity happen in real time. But the man was rather attuned to the deck, so he would play at a reasonable pace, therefore the judges could not give him any slow play warnings. Nevertheless, he would feel the gaze of the judges upon his shoulder, but he would frequently remind his opponents that they could concede at any point in time, so the judges wouldn't think he was stalling or using the time maliciously in his favor. With 5 rounds in Day 2, he would start with a 3-1 finish, requiring only one more win to make it into the top 32 cut, where the playoff would begin. And at this point, his utmost skill with the deck would be challenged, for his opponent was none other than Robbie Boyajin, a previous YCS champion. Not only was he a phenomenal player, but
Wait,
he also
what?
knew how the deck worked fundamentally because he had friends who had texted him previously
I
before
didn't realize
the
he was
match
that good.
about
He,
conceding early. But for some reason,
he ended up
wouldn't
working
concede
for
early enough,
Konami. He
leading
was,
to
like, a
time
really
being
good
called
player,
during
and then he's
siding
dipped.
after Game 1, which meant that
That's some
Alan
lore.
would be declared a 1-0 victory, propelling him into the top 32.
What I believe happened
Yo,
is
pizza.
that
Can
he
I see
was
the pizza?
trying to set up a situation where we would draw the match. Because if we drew, we would both make top 32. And it's a horrible matchup for him. So he pretty much knows that unless I get very unlucky, he's not going to win. So we're going into Game 2 with 1 minute left on the clock. Time was called while I was still figuring out which 10 cards to take out for my 10 burn cards. They're like, nope, you don't play Game 2. What's the score? And the answer was 1-0. So I won that match 1-0. Certainly upset my opponent. Some of the players watching, they assumed that like, oh, I'm just sitting there thinking about siding, trying to drain the clock. And it's like, no, I was legitimately siding. The judges, however, knew that, right? They had my deck list.
It was then that the judges began to sweat just a little bit because they knew the venue would have to be closed at a certain point in time. But with only a few hours left during the day, they had to make sure that the tournament was not stalled. And after a quick little huddle to discuss their options, it was determined that Alan's deck still had a win condition, and the deck was actively playing to achieve that win condition despite taking a
I was on the judge staff and we went over why it wasn't an illegal deck. The player plays at a brisk pace, even making shortcuts at times to move as fast as possible. The fact the player is playing literally hundreds of cards in one turn is attributed to poor R&D in card design and not the fact that the player is playing the cards in this manner. There is no repeated loop or iteration. If this were ever an issue, the player could make the semi-infinite variations of the loop one Mind August to the next, so long as the opponent deck is being depleted via hand destruction, card destruction, one day piece every iteration, and he isn't just gold fishing upstarts all day. The opponent is seeing all the cards in his deck, so he may want to continue in hopes of drawing Veilers or Heralds. It's not his fault they don't know it's futile. Alan was even nice enough to tell his opponent that they could have 20 Veilers and it wouldn't make a difference as far as the outcome. Not his fault that they cling to false hope. The head judge loved the deck and was Alan's biggest advocate. Short of an emergency ban of an integral part of the engine, you guys get to deal with it until September.
a long time,
there it
but
is.
he hadn't broken any policies, so his reign of terror on the tournament would continue. But no matter
Also, is that really true? Like, what, you Valor Magical Library, don't you run out of gas, surely? I don't know.
what happened, Alan knew that he had already
that a hot tub?
accomplished his goal. Achieving what many would have thought to be impossible.
Why are we in the hot
topping
tub?
a
I'm so
premier
confused.
level event was such a toxic strategy. Now, this was a time before live stream feature matches were a thing, so the only coverage we received was that of a written blog on the official Yu-Gi-Oh website. Now, the only problem with this was the fact that they didn't want to feature him.
No, I've specifically been told not to feature you. Konami wanted to bury this. I was really hoping that I could make it to top 2 or at least top 4, just because then they would be forced to feature my deck.
So the only real-time updates about Alan's success were posted by people who were actually there at the tournament onto online forums. His
Duelist
top 32
grounds.
opponent was none other than the Jeff Jones himself, one of the most accomplished players in the history of the entire game, having won and topped an endless number of premier events throughout his tenure. Jeff's expression would contort as Alan won the die roll, electing to go first in the single elimination round that would eventually crown the tournament champion. But
Wait, is
luck
this the
would not
final
be
or
on
top 4?
Alan's side, for he would draw his hand and quickly fizzle into the combo, having missed multiple coin tosses for cup of ace. Now, losing game 1 this early with the deck was pretty much a death sentence, because even if you win game 2, in game 3 the Mermo player can set up a Mulan Glacier to discard 2 cards from your hand, as well as a Abyss Chaos that can negate cards like Royal Magical Library.
How'd you beat the Gishki guy?
Well, to start off, I rolled a 10. I was pretty confident I was going to go first, which was really good. But then he rolled an 11, so I thought I was going to lose, but he fizzled on his turn 1, which is pretty lucky for me, I guess.
That's
Game
good.
2, he played Dark World Dealings. I could discard an Abyss Gundy and bring back a Spike to infantry to kill the library, but by the time he played Dark World Dealings, it was later in the game, and it already didn't matter. Game 3, I went first. My hand was pretty mediocre. My best play was to summon the Spike, discard the Dragoons, search Abyss Lead, discard 3 monsters for Abyss Lead, and pop a random card from his hand, and hope that it just got me there, and it ended up being enough.
What the fuck? The worst play in history. Holy shit, a -3 Mermail play to win the tournament. That's crazy. Abyss lead -3.
Eventually, the
that's
smoke
wacky.
would clear, and Jeff Jones would declare victory over Alan and his Gishki FTK strategy. The players and the judges in the hall let out a huge sigh of relief, erupting into a cheer as Jeff Jones got up from his seat, having eliminated the toxic strategy that could have sabotaged their entire weekend. And the rest of the tournament would continue as normal, completely devoid of that possibility. But Alan would still leave the table with a smile on his face, knowing that he had achieved the unthinkable. His performance would trigger a chain reaction online, and by the end of the weekend, the community was filled with disgust, with complaints sprouting across online forums. Pro players would even write guides on how to best defeat the strategy, shedding light about online forums.
People are salty, huh? Nothing's changed. Legal and a dick move. Did you expect anything else from Pennington? I've had to judge an event that he attended, and I've never had to attend as many judge calls for a single player at a single event ever. And he's supposedly looked at as an advanced player. He plays around the rules to win, and it's angering that he completely destroys the integrity of the game to do so. Womp
Pro
womp.
players would even write guides on how to best defeat the strategy, shedding light about when to concede against it and the most impactful cards to negate. A portion of the community
roll
even
them out.
started side decking cards just to beat the deck, with Nico Mane King and Drone Lockbird some of the most popular choices. But while most hated the idea of such a strategy existing, others reveled in the chaos and even
Just goes to show how stupid people are when a loop deck that decks an opponent out is even remotely in the consideration for illegal loop to stall for time.
celebrated his accomplishment.
Doesn't mean anything. Awesome!
But of course, when any community is
So much debating going down on the adjudication configuration conflag Facebook group over the deck building being an illegal loop for stalling for time.
in this much of an uproar,
What is there to argue about? Konami themselves said it wasn't. Like, judges, man.
by the following ban list, Evagishki Mind August would become limited to 1 per deck, effectively bringing an end to the near infinite loop. And although the
Oh,
deck
is that
would
like- is it
technically
that
still
important? Oh, I
make
guess
an
you need to
infinite
replace
loop
itself,
with
right?
just 1 copy of Mind August, by then the exponentially expanding power creep of the game, as well as the reduced consistency of the Gishki deck, meant that it would forever fade into obscurity.
Whether or not I ruined the event, at the end of the day, that is an opinion. That's certainly the view that some people had.
Thinking involves sitting and doing nothing while my opponent goes first, wins, and I don't even get a turn. It sucked when it was Magical Scientist, and it sucks now. The fun you derive is from winning, not from playing. I derive fun from playing and having a close match with my opponent. I want to be challenged and find victory. If I wanted to watch someone play Yu-Gi-Oh without my involvement, I'd watch the anime. Oh, 12 years ago, 99 Ninjas, 12 years ago. Wait till this guy plays against Malice in 2025, huh?
I mean, again, a lot of people had this attitude. They had this box of like what Yu-Gi-Oh
Anime.
is supposed to be. And if you were like outside of that box, you were sort of ruining it for everyone else. You're just sort of drawing an arbitrary line in the sands. Like, okay, it's fair for like wind-ups to just Shockmaster you turn 1 and then OTK you on turn 2, but then it's not fair for me to just deck you out on turn 1. Like, why should a distinction be made there?
But what happened?
Because your combo is more annoying and longer.
Happened to the man himself, Alan Pennington, you might ask? Well, after cementing an unforgettable legacy within the competitive history of Yu-Gi-Oh, he would quit the game and switch to Magic the Gathering instead. He also started.
Did he go and piss off Magic players? Yo, this is actually genius play by the Yu-Gi-Oh community. Bully him out of the community so that he goes and pisses off the Magic duelists instead.
Started a rapping career.
Going through the room, buying all the binders. I'm a Yu-Gi-Oh baller, and I always fresh. Never wear a dirty tee. Never drop a game, so I say GG.
Yet still periodically come.
Pretty rough, man. That was pretty bad. That was pretty rough, dude.
Coming back to the game and topping at premier events. But today, he still dabbles in retro Yu-Gi-Oh formats, including Go Control, where he has a YouTube channel, as well as another YouTube channel talking about his lifestyle in Asia.
Oh shit! Wait, that's the most abrupt end to a video I've ever seen. Holy.
GOAT format is a popular.
Fair enough. Okay. Well, there it is. The story of Yu-Gi-Oh's most annoying stall deck. All right. Well, let's move on. Good stuff from Squiddy. Very well made video. Genuinely. I can't get over like how good like the video like is.
But I decided to take
like just editing wise and stuff. It's an insanely good video. He's very talented.